my journey with autism and how we are managing it. My name is Consilia Njoku. I'm married with 2 boys. I am a specialist mom. I have 2 autistic children. My first son is 7 years old, and most of the experiences I've gotten from this autism journey came from my first son. My second son is just 2 years and 7 months old. Fortunately for me, a lot of the symptoms we're having from my second son don't really feel overwhelming or difficult to handle to me because of everything that we have gone through with my first son. Before I had my first son, I already had 2 miscarriages. When I was pregnant with my first son, at 5 months, I had appendectomy. After everything, the pregnancy went well. I had my baby safely. When my son was getting to 2 years old, we noticed that my son wasn't talking. So we decided to enroll him in school earlier than we actually planned. After the first 1 year in school, by then my son was already 3 years old, and we still didn't see any improvement. We first complained to the school, and we saw that the management, that particular school, didn't know anything about. They didn't just know my son was going through. They were just too confused. So we left. We had to find another school for him. We looked for schools. We went to the pediatrician at the same time. We later found a school where they told us, okay, that they have actually had this kind of cases before. And they monitored our son for like the first 2 weeks after I started with them. And then they called us for a meeting and told us a lot of things about autism, and they told us that we would have to go for diagnosis. They referred us to a child psychologist, someone they've been working with, and at the same time, the pediatrician also referred us to a neurologist. After everything, we went for assessment, and they told us my son had autism. They said mild to moderate autism. I was trying to pressure the psychologist, trying to tell her that this cannot be, it's mild, it's just very mild. After she told us, she showed us everything, diagnosis, the result, the question, everything they asked us, and even all the tests, all the time, all the sessions they had with my son, and everything, and how they consider the diagnosis, the levels, or everything. Anyway, so that was how we started. They told us, then they referred us, the psychologist asked us to go for ear tests to be sure that my son is able to hear, and also asked us we are going to have to get a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, ABA therapist. After everything, we went to the school. The school also gave us the own advice and everything. And then they now told us everything that we have to do therapy and everything that goes with the therapy, and that we should also know that the therapy doesn't really work very fast. It wasn't an easy thing for me. I would always imagine how my son would go to school and come back every day, and I keep hoping for the day my son would at least tell me what happened in school, or even call the name of his teacher, or say something at all, something that happened in school. Anytime they do exams and come home, my son will come back with scripts. Even though they were still little, the schools always have their own ways of assessing children. They would always state not responding on the script, not responding, not responding. This second school we later went to, they were saying need to improve. I'd always cry every time I saw the results. The stressing part of it is that even my child, when I'm with him, and I would be checking a lot of things, a lot of reports from school, and I'll be with him and crying with him, but my son still would not understand that the person with him was crying. I kept thinking of my friends, my siblings, my relations, everybody that I knew. None of the people close to me have any kind of special needs child or autistic child. I would just be wondering, what did I do exactly? I know I once told my husband that I don't know why God should be punishing me, even after I've already gone through a lot of issues with pregnancy, these miscarriages. I had hormonal imbalance, a lot of things that I treated before finally having a baby, and I was expecting at least to have a perfect baby, a child that I will look at, I'll play with, I'll talk with, like I've always seen other parents do. But along the line, I had to accept my reality. Considering the costs of having a therapist, they told us that we're going to get therapists, even though the school told us, okay, they had some companies that can offer us both speech and occupational therapy together. But then we would have to get therapists for my son who would also work with my son separately. And then at the same time, we have to pay school fees separately and pay for the therapy. After we checked all of that, they told us, okay, as they do therapy, the condition will keep improving gradually. Maybe by the time your child gets to 7 years old, he must have improved well. By then, they will start withdrawing the therapy gradually. Then, so my husband and I just asked ourselves questions. How? And even when these people say these things, we keep wondering, how do they even think this will even be a reality? We're going to be paying for school fees. We'll pay school fees, we'll pay therapy fees, and therapy fees will be paid every month. For how many years? And then we also have to pay school fees. After deliberating, we just had to meet the child psychologist again. We talked to her. We told her that we were not going to be able to afford paying for school fees and therapy at the same time. So she then advised us that what our child needed at that time was a therapy. That if our child was, if we don't do therapy for our child, then sending him to school wouldn't be useful because my child didn't have all the skills he needed to fit into a classroom environment independently. So we had to, because of that, we had to now withdraw my son from school and started doing therapy at home. Until at home, we're doing homeschooling for 1 year. Then after the first 1 year, then we now started looking at going back to school. And that was when my son was 5 years and 4 months old. To around June, July, I started around May, June, I started asking questions about school. Someone told people, all the therapists we're getting, they were giving us advices about the kind of schools we would get. So one of the therapists worked in a school. She told us the name of the school she worked, and that the school was an inclusive school. So we now decided to take our son to the school and find out about everything, all the requirements they needed for us to enroll him back into the school. Then we got him in the school. I was actually expecting that when my son goes back to school, he was going to start from nursery 2 because at first, then he was in nursery 1 first. At first, when we got our diagnosis, then we stayed at home for another 1 year, which was supposed to be, we assumed he was repeating another nursery 1. Then when we were ready to send him back to school, then they told us, okay, that my son was going to still remain in nursery 1 because he didn't have all the skills that he needed. During the assessment, he didn't respond to any questions. He doesn't follow instructions. He doesn't play with toys the right way. He doesn't know how to play with toys. He wasn't responding verbally to any of the questions. I was very, very heartbroken, of course, because I was just wondering what is going on, what is really going on. So after everything, when we got home that day, after we went back, after the assessment, we went back another day to get the results. When we now got back home after getting the results, I told my husband that I wanted to work with my son by myself and see how it goes. Because I've noticed that a lot of therapists working with him, they try their best, but apart from that, my son is someone who is very strong-willed. There are many times the therapists will come, my son would not want to obey any instructions or do anything. He would struggle with them. Sometimes he would climb on the person's body and just be screaming. So I just told my husband I was going to try my best, try to handle him by myself. That was how I started. That was how I got into this therapy, into everything I'm doing now, actually. I started working with my son, then I just created time because at that time I wasn't working in the office. I wasn't doing regular office work anymore. So I had the time, to work my son at home. I created 2 hours every day. I made sure I work my son 7 days a week, 2 hours every day. I will take my son to the room and lock the door. I tell him that you have to obey every instruction I give you today. We will work together, whether you want to keep quiet or not. My son will be screaming, crying, everything. He would do everything, no matter what. I told him that I would always tell him that no matter what you do, you would stay here until you obey my instructions. So that was how we started working. The first week was struggle. We kept struggling together until then. From the second week, my son realized that if he doesn't do what I want him to do, he definitely cannot go anywhere. So the only solution, the only way out of the situation he was always in was to obey me. So that was when he started trying to do the things I was telling him. My son started trying to make attempts to talk. Sometimes I'll talk and get too tired. My mouth be paining me, my throat be paining me. That was when I now saw all those therapists go through. After July, my son was able to write like up to 1 to 10, write his letter sounds, write the alphabet, the lower cases. We're just working with the lower cases though. By the end of August, my son was able to write all his letter sounds, say all the letter sounds, say 1, 2 to 100, right? And write 1 to 20. And he was reading 2 letter words and attempting to read 3 letter words before. That was by September. By the time we went back to school, everyone in school they were all surprised. So this is actually one of the reasons why I'm doing what I started the awareness I'm doing this year. I just want to parents. I want to just let parents know that the progress that your autistic child is going to have with therapy all depends mostly on the parents. That's basically why I'm doing everything I'm doing now, trying to send out their awareness to parents, to care, especially moms, because most of the times it's moms that will have most of the time will have more time to spend with the children. And I think it's even moms that have that patience more, you know. I learned to do this by force because I saw that there was no other way out for me. I just had to learn it. So the moms are the ones I believe can actually put in enough time into doing this and also have the patience to keep trying and repeating themselves over and over again. When I work with my son, I try to put in all my energy in doing it. Some dads too, you know, sometimes it might be the dad that is the primary caregiver of the child. So let's all put all the efforts we need to make sure that we get the best results from our children's therapy.